Hello, my beautiful co-creators. Lilu here. I'm on Big Island actually for the very last day here, or on this side of the island. We're near Kona. Where are we right now?
South Kona.
Is it Kealakekua Bay or?
Kealakekua Bay, yeah.
Finally said it after a week being here. Whoa.
And that means, in Hawaiian, that means pathway of the gods.
Yes. So I thought that would be a pretty good spot to do an interview with a very special person that is very in tune with the energies of the moment and what's going on right now. Isn't that right? Your name is?
Maika.
Maika.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got introduced, and this is just the natural flow and synchronicities of life, and here we are. So tell us about how you got it. Tell us about you a little bit, because we're starting to talk about we started off by talking about Nassim Aramai, and now we're here talking about your own background and how you got into this. You're interested about the different prophecies.
Yeah.
You've learned a lot from them.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it all.
Well, my interest, I first got involved about 30 years ago in natural health and for my own healing. And as I started to study it, I started to understand and look into the science of what was being learned about the human body, 30 years ago. And with an understanding of what they were starting to learn in genetics and human potential, that was really where I started. And looking at holistic health and understanding that how did we get here and how do we maintain our level of not only health, but how does that relate to consciousness and our understanding as human beings. And looking at history and studying ancient cultures and their perspective of our relationship with life and, the elements and how we got to be here. And in studying all that, I started to look deeper and deeper into the sciences, and with an understanding of basically what we are as human beings is we are made of cells. Just like everything on the planet, we have this relationship to everything on the planet through cellular structure. And that's really been the evolutionary process when we look at it as biological systems. The evolutionary process has been the development of the cell and then multi-cell organisms and how that has an innate intelligence. It has an intelligence of its own that we're still trying to understand. And as I started to study those things and looked into all these different aspects of nature and being human and consciousness, and started looking into the sciences, and from a scientific perspective, from going to the microscopic, looking down into the cell, and then going into the macroscopic, going out into the cosmos, and for me, my own inquiry of how to understand all these relationships.
So who really struck you as one of the teachers? Who's one of your favorites? Who did you mainly learn from, or did you just dig into it by yourself?
I really dug into it by myself. When I first got involved on a spiritual path, I met a mentor, and his name was Park Maloney. He's no longer with us. And back then, about 30 years ago, he was in his 80s. And he was a chiropractor, and he was a wizard. He was into energy. He was into magnetism. He was into color, and he taught me a lot about the brain, especially how the brain takes in information energetically, vibrationally, and how all that begins to transfer into information, into what we call awareness. So he was my first introduction. I went from a young kid in the 60s, with addiction to alcohol and drugs, and then I quit all that and got onto the spiritual path, and it was this great turnaround, and he introduced me to all these concepts of energy and vibration and magnetism and spirit. And so he was really my first mentor that just expanded me beyond anything that I had imagined at that time. And from that, my path really begun, with a really wide perspective of looking at what we are as consciousness, as human beings, and how everything is just pure energy. So that really fascinated me, and that led me to go into the sciences. And
so you got interested, obviously, by sacred geometry at some point.
Right off the bat, actually, yeah. He was really into using geometry and different things to affect the brain, and looking into that, looking into how information is stored geometrically. And as I looked into that, even looking into the cell, when you take the cell and you look into what feeds the cell, and you look into even nutrients, and you blow them up into with an electron microscope, everything is geometrical. And that's how information gets into the cell. Like even a vitamin docks into a geometrical shape in the cell, and it's a specific geometry, and that geometry is filled with information. And again, you can take that from the microscopic to the macroscopic. Everything in space is just information. And our ability as human beings to decode that information is what gives us awareness.
So tell us, for example, here we're at a 19.7 degree, which is quite a very special, unique spot in the world. Can you tell us about that? It's related to sacred geometry, Merkaba.
Yeah, exactly. On this point, we're actually at 19.47 degrees latitude. And what that means is at the equator is 0. And then the degrees go both north and south. So there's a 19.47 north degree, and there's a 19.7 south degree. And I don't have a diagram, which always makes it easier, but in a Merkaba, or a Star David, 6-pointed star, if you look at the points of the star, so you have 2 points, the north and the south, and then you have the horizontal points.
Yes.
Of the corners of the triangle. Well, at those points, it's about 19.7 degrees from the center of the point. And it seems like on all the planets, there's some strange anomaly that happens at that degree. The spot on Jupiter, Neptune has a spot at that degree. And so what it's believed...
What kind of anomalies? Like big mountains, is that what it is?
Well, on Jupiter, there's a storm, a giant storm that stays at that latitude, and they don't understand why that happens. Here at the Big Island, we have this all the islands in the Hawaiian island chain for 1,400 miles that go northeast from here, or northwest, I'm sorry, that they are all made from the same lava tube. Basically, there is a channel that comes up from the magma tube of the earth right here on Big Island, and what happens is the Pacific plate goes over it like this, going to the northwest. So this tube stays the same, and it's what builds the islands, actually. So Maui was built from this tube, Oahu, Kauai, they were all built from this magma tube coming up. So that stays the same. That stays at about 19.5 degree. And the Pacific plate moves over it. So it is believed that at these points are very special geometrical points that pull in energy and bring out energy. So this area on the Earth would be considered a place of major creational energy, just like the islands. They're created here. So it's new Earth being created here. And on this degree specifically in its relationship with the tetrahedron, or the Merkaba, where they spin in opposite directions, it creates a certain force of energy. And again, it's the dynamics of energy when you start getting into an understanding like quantum physics, where how the energies work in the invisible world, in the micro world. How these energies work eventually create the physical reality. So we know that from a scientific perspective, the physical world is made up of energy. In the indigenous cultures, what they would say is the physical world is made of spirit. So what I found was this interesting relationship to ancient ways of speaking about life and looking at life, and how modern scientists are looking at life and speaking about life. They just use different words. But basically there's this invisible stuff that makes reality. And the way this stuff is made, from what we know in science, is through geometry. The geometry structure is made like a blueprint in the etheric, in the invisible world. And then what happens in the invisible world eventually becomes made manifest in the physical world. And that's where human thought comes into place, in how we create as human beings, how we play a role in creation as co-creators. And that is all determined by the level of our awareness.
So we're godlike. We become godlike. Like here, we're just in this portal.
Yeah, we actually are, when we, again, with our understanding of God as being something that is a creator, that somehow out of itself, it manifests reality. And we are made out of that manifestation. So just by definition, everything is God. You know, rocks are God, we're God. We just have the ability to mold matter with our mind. And we do that in our imagination, in our thought processes. We are actually always molding in a relationship with creating. And the idea of us becoming conscious co-creators as compared to programmed co-creators, which is a very deep subject in and of itself, and understanding how the mind works and how the mind can be programmed to create, not unconsciously, but without an awareness of what's going on and the energies that we put into creating with. Because in our modern world, it seems we are very influenced by what we think and how we believe, according to certain people who really do understand this process and have determined to control our reality by controlling our minds. Basically, it's a psychological slavery, you know. And so the idea of what's happening right now, you know, for a lot of people, we can notice there are some dramatic changes in the world that are taking place. There are weather changes, there are wars going on all over the place, there's financial upheaval. It seems like we're in a state of chaos. And in that state of chaos, there are those who are trying to manipulate our reality to become what they want it to be. And that is control. If you haven't been through an airport lately or looked at the news lately, you wouldn't see how much control is going on. You know, I recently went to the mainland, and the idea of going through the airports where you have to go through all this security, and there's so much fear involved in just even traveling and going out in the world.
It's heavy, yeah.
It's very, very intense, and it's very all perpetuated purposefully. And the idea of that at this time is to really interfere with people tuning into the creational process that is happening for the possible awakening of the higher potential of human beings. And so
there's techniques to tap in this on a day-to-day basis wherever we live around the world, because I know people are watching this from Europe, from Asia, from, you know, maybe not Hawaii, that has, and maybe not from the 19.7 degree.
Well, again, it's a very long story, you know. In our culture, as it has evolved, we're used to getting information in sound bites. You know, give us the quick information, give us the quick fix. What can we do? And we're used to that. But again, when we look at the ancient cultures, like the Hawaiians, you spend a lifetime in learning information about how to live even, you know, about how to speak, about how to be a human being. It was a lifetime of learning, and everybody partook in that. The family, the cousins, the aunts and the uncles, everybody partook in helping children learn to become good human beings. You know, and in our culture, we're so, you know, everything is so quick, and we're off to one thing to the next without really a deep understanding of how to become a human being, what a human being is, and how to use the tools that we have called our mind and our emotions and our behavior. So yeah, there are a number of techniques.
Or should I say a process or a way of being or an intention or something that we can start in the process. And I know a lot of people here have been seeing, you know, the John Vallow interview. So it's an aware crowd. But there's still some things we get caught in the day-to-day details. And there's sure some things to do so that we can open up more and more each day. Or just we might need to be reminded of something here from you today. That's why I feel this conversation is happening. You have a very special message that is unique to you.
Well, the idea that, again, to understand everything is energy. And the forces that are using this knowledge against the awakening of human beings. And the awakening really has to do with our heart. Because there is an intelligence in our heart that will guide us to be good human beings. And when that's taken away, then we're caught in this mental construct of what's important in our life, what's important in what we do and who we are, which is very different than what's in our pure heart. And the goal really is to merge those, to actually learn from the heart, learn from nature, the heart of nature, to understand how to be a good human being, how to treat people kindly, how to treat the earth in a good way. So in that understanding, those who would try to corrupt that are constantly bombarding us with things that harm that connection. Cell phones, all the electronics that we use actually numb our awareness. They interfere with our connection to the invisible truth of the vibration, the subtle vibrations of heart information.
And they serve their purpose too. I feel like everything is balanced, and it has another side to it too that is very handy. I know this wouldn't happen otherwise, and cell phones allow some type of connections, no?
Well,
you're speaking more on an electromagnetic side.
It's really more the electromagnetic and the waves that go through the atmosphere.
Yes. Those
specific waves, see, because when we talk about consciousness and awareness, and even scientists are looking for where that connection is in our brain, where is the connection to information and intelligence and mind and consciousness? And when we really look inside the brain and we look at how we become aware as human beings. How can you be aware as a human being of what's going on in your world, of who you are, of your own thoughts, of your emotions? And there's a deep process inside the brain that allows all that to happen. And at the center of the brain, there's something called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is believed to be the seat of the soul, or where we make our cosmic connection to the light of consciousness. It's this little gland, and when the gland gets a frequency vibration, it vibrates and produces these things called hormones, which are sacred geometrical, molecular, biological information systems that link us up with everything else. And there's a lot of research on this little gland. And what they found, the cell phone companies actually did a lot of research on this. And what they found is this gland tends to vibrate at the frequency that cell phones are dialed to. And so what's happening when we use cell phones, they're convenient, and I use mine once in a while, but I'm real careful about keeping it away from the head. But these frequencies that are going through the air all the time, what they're doing is they're interfering with this gland's higher function. And in that, the goal really is to understand that this is a sacred gland, so to speak. It's a sacred connection. It is the sacred connection. The Hopi talk about at this time, the most important thing to do is keep the top of your head open. That's what they say. Keep the top of your head open. And the reason for that is that there's information that comes from higher dimensions, higher levels, from the cosmos, that connect us into our innate knowingness.
That's what some people call downloads?
That's what some people call downloads. They're spiritual downloads. The way spiritual energy works is it first goes into that little gland, and then it starts to inform our brain. And I could go very deeply into this, and I actually have a presentation where I go deeply into this understanding, because people like information sometimes. But the idea that at this time where we're all being guided by the level of our consciousness. Let me say it that way. Our level of